Welcome to another edition of Life, Love, and Philosophy. This is the sixth in a series of programs I'm doing on heroism and what famous thinkers in philosophy, psychology, literature, and religion have said about it. The main theme of today's program is based on a very famous book on the subject of heroism. The title of the book is The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell, the late Joseph Campbell. Campbell was a professor at Sarah Lawrence College for about 40 years and was one of the world's foremost authorities on mythologies. Professor Campbell had spent a lifetime studying the hero stories of many different cultures. He zeroed in, for example, on the holy books of different cultures and the hero stories in those books. Books such as the Holy Bible, the Buddhist Dhammapada, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita. He also studied epic poems such as the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer. And also, Campbell was very interested in the oral traditions of primal peoples, for example, of the American Indians. What did Campbell learn from studying the hero stories of many different cultures? Well, one of the things he says he learned is that heroic figures such as Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, the fictional Odysseus, all had something in common. They conformed to a pattern. Professor Campbell maintained there were many similarities in the hero stories. Campbell says he also learned that if each of us is to acquire wisdom and feel the rapture of being alive, it's incumbent upon us to take an heroic journey, or adventure as he sometimes described it. This adventure or journey would have similar components for everyone. And where does this historic journey, which Campbell believed we all should take, where does it take place? Professor Campbell said it takes place in our minds. It's a consciousness-raising experience. It's an experience which brings about a transformation in our thinking. In other words, it's a journey to a higher consciousness, a journey to a higher level of awareness. What's the aim of this journey? The aim, according to Campbell, is to see more clearly and to understand ourselves and other people and life at a much more deep level. Professor Campbell also believed that another important goal of this journey is to acquire perspective, to see the forest and not just the trees, and also to check ourselves out in this sense, to make sure we haven't spent a lot of time sweating the small stuff, thinking the small stuff is the big stuff. Campbell also said we want to experience a wider and deeper range of feelings. Campbell's idea of taking a journey to a higher level of consciousness reminds me of much of what Thoreau wrote. In Walden, Thoreau penned the following words: "Be a Columbus to whole new continents and worlds within you, opening new channels, not of trade, but of thought." Thoreau went on to say this: "You'll find 1,000 regions of your mind, yet undiscovered." We had better pay much attention to our thinking. After all, much of life consists of thinking. The Buddha put it this way: we are what we think. With our thoughts, we make the world. Campbell and Thoreau both believed that this journey to a higher level of consciousness, of awareness, was also a journey to the higher self. Jesuit priest John Powell, I think, provides some illumination on this subject. He said this: "The image each of us has of himself or herself is the product of what other people, rightly or wrongly, have told us that we are." Well, this journey, this heroic journey, which Professor Campbell believed we must all take, he believed this journey would free us from illusions we have about ourselves and other people. Indeed, many thinkers have claimed that the privilege of a lifetime is being who one truly is. Many people have contributed to giving other people a false identity. Let me say that again. Many people, intentionally or unintentionally, have contributed to giving others a false identity. If, for example, we meditate on the way in which women and blacks and gays have been treated in history, and think about how other people defined women and blacks and gays. For example, conditioning them to feel that they were inferior. Indeed, in many areas of the world, this is still true. We can see that it was quite easy over the centuries and even today for many women, blacks, and gays, among other groups of people, to feel inferior, to have accepted the way other people had defined them. Also, we know it's not unusual for some people to define other people by their job title and social status. And how many people have been confused about their own identity because they have accepted other people's definition of themselves based on their job title and their possessions. The great thinkers have been pretty much unanimous in claiming that only a fool would judge another person based on his possessions and social status. The great thinkers say that wise people judge other people based on their character. Thoreau talked about the need of each of us to wake up. Here are his own words: "To be awake is to be alive. I have never yet met a man who was completely awake. How could I have looked him in the face?" The Buddha, the term the Buddha literally means the one who waked up. Professor Campbell, on the subject of growing old wisely, has said this: that it's important as we age that we identify ourselves more with our consciousness than with our body. Yes, it is true that that as we grow older and as we grow into old age, we will have more wrinkles, for example, but Professor Campbell says, nevertheless, our consciousness can be much richer than it has been at any stage in our lives. Indeed, Joseph Campbell talked about comparing ourselves to a light bulb. A light bulb? Yes, let me explain. Professor Campbell raised this question: am I the bulb that carries the light? Or am I the light of which the bulb is simply a vehicle? And of course, Professor Campbell believed we should think of ourselves in terms of being the light and not the bulb. Campbell claimed that the lives of Jesus and Buddha provide excellent examples of the heroic journey. Jesus and Buddha are illustrative of evolved consciousnesses. Both suffered much, and both used their suffering to move to higher levels of awareness. Indeed, so many of the great thinkers in religion and philosophy have said that so often it's suffering that moves us to higher levels of awareness. Indeed, the famous Russian novelist Dostoevsky put it this way, and I'm quoting him: "The sole origin of consciousness is suffering." Jesus and Buddha also spent much time alone, and so many of their key moments in their heroic journey were moments of solitude. And we also ultimately alone in questing for a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of awareness. Other people cannot give us certain things. For example, other people cannot give us self-respect. Other people cannot give us wisdom. Indeed, very often, other people, even family members and friends, can be obstacles to achieving a higher level of awareness. What might cause one to make this journey, again, this journey to a higher level of consciousness? Well, Campbell claims discontent with where one is, and also genuine despair. Genuine despair can be the motivating factor. Here, psychoanalyst Carl Jung provides some motivation. Jung believed that many men become neurotic as they approach middle age or during middle age because they have not been true to themselves. Jung was a very famous Swiss psychiatrist, and so many of his patients were very successful careerists, mostly men, as a matter of fact. Jung claimed that most of the successful careerists he treated were not suffering from any clearly defined neurosis. Rather, they were suffering from the senselessness and aimlessness of their lives. Campbell believed that Easter and Passover offer perfect symbols for what they mean is that we are called to a new life. What's the destination of the hero's journey? Again, what's the destination of the hero's journey? Well, the hero treks not to some unknown land, but rather to unknown parts of one's mind. And also, the hero discovers a deeper side to his own personality and to other people's personalities. Professor Campbell sums up the goal of this so-called heroic journey in this way, and it's a very concise summing up. Professor Campbell says, the goal of the journey is to discover ourselves as consciousness. The goal of the journey is to discover ourselves as consciousness. Remember what the Buddha said. We are what we think. The important thing about each of us is the quality of his or her awareness, of his or her consciousness. If I might draw an analogy to a computer, we know that some of us have stored much more valuable information in our computers than other people. Well, so too with the mind. Some of us have stored much more valuable information in our minds than others, and some of us are questing for much more valuable information. Some people have better intellectual vision than others. Some people have better spiritual vision than others. They see more and they see better. And they see with their hearts and their minds, not just with their eyes. Schopenhauer, the famous German philosopher, claimed we all have blind spots, that there are certain aspects of ourselves and others in life that we just don't see. But if we are growing older gracefully, and if we are achieving higher levels of awareness, we can diminish those blind spots and again see more and understand more about ourselves, others, and life. With higher awareness also comes more life-enriching values. I'll have more to say about that later. How does one begin this journey, this inward journey to a higher level of awareness? Well, according to Professor Campbell, it starts with changing one's focus. Here are his own words. It consists in a radical transfer of emphasis from the external world to the internal world. Campbell claimed we must all move into our loneliness, that it's in solitude that we generally move to higher levels of awareness, that we need silence and we need solitude, and we must engage in deep listening to ourselves. Campbell also claimed that in order to move to a higher level of awareness, it's also important to become involved in a critical evaluation of how the majority of people think. Socrates, Jesus, Buddha, Confucius, so many of the great thinkers have said that other people, again including our family members and friends, can actually confuse us as to what is true and false about ourselves and about life. Walt Whitman put it this way. The famous American poet said this, and I'm quoting Whitman: "Re-examine all you have been told in school or in church or in any book, and dismiss what insults your soul." I have little doubt if Walt Whitman were alive today, he would also talk about how essential it is to re-examine what we have been told on TV and what we have been told by the advertising and music and movie industries, and to re-examine what they have told us. What might be some important aids in this journey to a higher level of consciousness? Well, Campbell lists many possible aids. Among them are illuminating books in religion, philosophy, psychology, literature, plays. With regard to religion, I mentioned before that Campbell says there is much illumination to be found in all the great holy books. Again, the Bible, the Buddhist Dhammapada, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, and there are other holy books as well. But Campbell claimed, if we are going to use the religious books wisely, he believed it's important to realize that most of the stories that are told in holy scriptures never occurred. These stories are not literally true. These stories are symbolically true. For example, Campbell believed that the Virgin Mary, the story of the virgin birth, is not literally true. It's symbolically true. According to Campbell, what the virgin birth means symbolically is the birth of spiritual man out of animal man. So again, if you're following Campbell's advice, and of course one doesn't, if one is reading the holy books, again, he claimed they are especially valuable if one does not look upon them as being literally true, but rather symbolically true. He says we should look upon them as poems. Among some of the novels, by the way, that I have found extremely useful in moving to higher levels of consciousness, and these are novels anyone can read, even if one doesn't have a passion for reading. First, a book called Siddhartha, some pronounce it Siddhartha, by Nobel Prize-winning writer Hermann Hesse. It's a very short novel, and it's about a man's quest for wisdom. It's loosely based on the life of the Buddha. Again, the name of the book, Siddhartha, Siddhartha, by Hermann Hesse. Another book, a short book, a novel, I have found very useful in helping me to think more clearly, is a book by the great novelist Leo Tolstoy. It's one of his shortest books. It's a book entitled The Death of Ivan Ilyich. The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And again, you can buy it at any good bookstore. If you've never read anything by Tolstoy, this would be a great book to start with. The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Also, Campbell claimed other people can be helpful to us in achieving a higher level of awareness. A good teacher, a wise friend, a loving friend. Also, experiences can be helpful, even tragic experiences. An auto accident, for example, a serious illness can help us focus to what's can help us focus on really what's important in life. Professor Campbell also says that just living with one's heart open to others in compassion can be a life-enriching experience, which helps us to think more clearly. And of course, art and music can be so helpful in moving to higher levels of consciousness. Question: how will one know if one's journey to a higher self has been successful? Well, among Campbell's benchmarks are the following. He says one has become individuated. That's psychoanalyst Carl Jung's term, by the way. Campbell says that if a person's journey has been successful, the person has a better understanding of his or her uniqueness. Campbell also says that such a person has found and learned how to live out of one's own center and is now in control of one's for and against. This reminds me of Thoreau and something he wrote. Thoreau put it this way, and I'm quoting him: "If a person does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music he hears, however measured or far away." Campbell claims another benchmark to determine if we've moved to a higher level of consciousness is this: one has become truly mature. And how does one know if one has become truly mature? Well, you become mature when you become the authority for your own life. You become mature when you become the authority for your own life. When your mother, your father, your brother-in-law, your rabbi, your minister, your priest is no longer the authority for your life, but you are. That doesn't mean you don't listen to people like that and what they have to say. You do. And of course, you consider what they have to say, but you also question what they have to say. And then you decide on the validity of what they have told you. Another benchmark is this: one is no longer concerned with prestige. Again, if one has attained a high level of consciousness, one is no longer concerned with prestige. Professor Campbell puts it this way: what will they think of me must be set aside for bliss, for happiness. He says it's society's trap. Again, considering what other people think of oneself is society's trap. It will get in the way of fulfilling living. Campbell says that at times we must resist the system because the system often doesn't serve humanity. Campbell also says we must try to find a purpose in life in addition to professional and marital fulfillment. Job advancement and self-advancement are not the same thing. Job advancement should not be confused with self-development. One can advance one's career and not advance one's self-development. Self-development is more of a spiritual thing. It's more related to one's consciousness than, again, job advancement. Also, Campbell claims, if we have truly matured, it means we will have a deep compassion for other people. We will have a deeper knowledge and understanding of the pervasiveness of suffering in the world, of the universality, he says, of suffering in the world. Campbell says one realizes there is much sorrow in life, but nevertheless participates in life with joy. Campbell claims if we wish to imitate Jesus Christ, we should do the following. And here are Campbell's own words: the imitation of Christ is joyful participation in the sorrows of this world. Campbell says that life's great, but it does hurt. He also gives this advice. Find a place of joy and the joy will burn out the pain. Find a place of joy, and the joy will burn out the pain. One who has successfully undertaken this journey to a higher level of consciousness also no longer fears death. The hero would be no hero if death held any terror for him or her. The person who has taken this journey to a higher consciousness will have experienced a kind of withdrawal from society, at least a withdrawal in the mind, but also a kind of return to society. But one returns a different person, a more intellectually self-reliant person, and as I said, a more compassionate person, a person who looks forward to being of service to other people, a person who is more critical of the way the majority thinks, but who also is more self-critical, a person who has more self-control, a person who is more self-confident and more tranquil and more joyful, and a person who has more noble values. Once we achieve this higher level of consciousness, according to Campbell, it's not that what we see is different, it's that how we see is different. In other words, the idea is that nothing has changed externally, but everything has changed internally. And I think I can conclude this segment on Joseph Campbell by pointing out that the Buddha, in talking about how important our thoughts are to us, has said this. The Buddha said, your worst enemy cannot hurt you as much as your thoughts, your own thoughts unguarded. But then he went on to say, but once you have mastered your thoughts, no one can help you as much, not even your mother or father. And finally, Henry David Thoreau reminds us that we are all artists. In Walden, Thoreau penned the following words: to affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts.